Chapter 8, August 9th, 2400 hours. Now, I whispered to Pete, and we swooped down on them out of the forest. It's midnight, and they are asleep in their tent. We hit them with everything we've got. The attack is on! Grunting, snarling, growling, Pete circles their tent at high speed, ferociously, raking the sides of it with the artificial claws we made out of tree branches. The Wolverine wants in! Working fast, I remove the 6 stakes around the base of the tent, as well as the ones that anchor the ropes attached to the tent poles. Front and back, I gather the freed ropes in my hands like reins. Pete cups his hand around his mouth and howls his head off. I begin jerking rapidly on the ropes. The tent poles are dancing, the tent is swaying, the sides are billowing. Not a peep from inside. Too scared to even scream. Now Pete is working at the door, digging at it, reaching under it and clawing at the nylon floor. He is whining. I station myself at the front of the tent. I have the fake Wolverine under one arm, Pete's torn t-shirt stuffed with leaves. Pete, snorting and snuffling, finds the zipper and in one quick motion unzips the front of their tent. He jumps aside, flinging open the tent flaps. I toss the Wolverine inside, grab the camera hanging from around my neck, and aim it at the girls. For the picture of a lifetime. For the picture of our dreams. For... Wait. Something's wrong. The tent is empty. Oh, boys. Looking for someone? The girls are behind us. We spin around, and I take a bucket of water in the face. It's cold, and it's got something slimy in it. Water lilies, maybe, or some sort of gunk from the bottom of the lake. Pete gets a bucket full, too. A lily pad gets caught on his ear. "Get 'em!" roars Pete. Whooping with laughter, the girls gallop back across the clearing. Pete and I whip out our flashlights and sprint after them. I don't stop to ask myself what we're going to do if we catch them. I don't have any idea, but I definitely don't think we're going to ask them for their hands in marriage. They skid around the safari tent and hightail it into the trees. Pete and I follow at full speed. We trip over the clothesline that is slung low at ankle level between 2 trees. We sprawl forward, belly flopping into a soft pile of mud and leaves. A flash goes off. A camera flash. They've done it again. Covered with mud and bristling with leaves, we charged out into their clearing. We were after that camera, and we meant business. We saw too late that there was a woman standing in the middle of the clearing, a couple of cameras slung around her neck, her hands on her hips, squared off in front of Jill and Sonny in a no-nonsense stance. "What's going on here?" she was demanding. It didn't take a genius to figure out that it was Aunt Catherine, back early from her night photography, and she looked like a pretty tough customer. She caught sight of us, and the 3 of them turned around and looked at us. The girls shined their flashlights in our direction. We dived back into the forest. Who were they? We heard Aunt Catherine blurt out. We didn't get more than 5 feet before I ran into a stiff little bush about waist high, bounced off, and smashed into Pete. We went down. "Oh, them?" Jill was explaining casually. "They're just a couple of North American vampire wolverines. But don't worry, Aunt Catherine. I don't think they'll be back." Chapter 9. We trudged home. Discouraged, dejected, in the dumps. The commando team of Moose Mackenzie and Duck Wilson had definitely fallen on hard times. Pete stopped to kick a tree. "Rats!" he said for the 50th time. How could we be so stupid? "Because we're numbskulls," I explained gloomily. "We're nitwits. We're a couple of North American nitwitted numbskulls." We had our flashlights out and were following an unfamiliar trail. We would have gone back the same way we came, but we'd made such a hasty exit from the girls' camp that we'd missed our turnoff. We weren't worried, though, because the trail we were on seemed to be headed for the big hill in the middle of the island. Earlier that day, just before dark, we had taken a compass reading on the hill from a point near Hidden Valley, figuring that it was probably the highest point on the island and would make a good landmark. Now all we had to do was get to the top of the hill, use the opposite reading, and we should come close to home. Already the trail was beginning to climb. Behind me, Pete gave a snort of disbelief. Oh, yeah, but how could we be so stupid? He blurted out. I wiped some of the mud off my forehead. Oh, you got me, I said grimly. They just outsmarted us, that's all. They saw through us right from the start. I shook my head and then added meaningfully, but next time. Yeah, said Pete, still disgusted, but with a little ray of hope in his voice. Next time, we won't be so stupid. It turned out that the trail did lead to the hilltop, or at least to the jumble of large boulders that covered the summit. Before heading down to the west, Pete and I decided to climb to the top of the highest rock for a look around. A minute later, we were surveying the whole of the entire island, the whole of Turtle Island. Since there was no moon and it was a dark night, the island itself was inky black, but it was silhouetted clearly against the dark gray of the lake. Overhead, a couple of bats swooped after insects. The sky was full of hundreds of stars, and just out of habit I located the North Star and some of the brightest summer stars. We looked southeast in the direction of the girls' camp. No lights, which was logical since their campsite was probably hidden by trees, and besides, they were probably sound asleep by now, with big happy grins on their faces, merrily chuckling away. The creeps. I checked out the north. Most of the island lay in that direction, stretching out for 3/4 of a mile or more, before coming to a point. For us, it was all unexplored territory. Suddenly, I saw something. Something weird. In the distance, against the blackness of the island, almost at the northern tip, an eerie orange light was moving. "Pete, look," I said. For 4 or 5 seconds, the light moved to the left, traveling fast. Much faster than a person could run. Then it paused and moved quickly back to the right. It looked like it might be flying, but the pattern didn't make sense. It moved to the left again, then to the right, slowing down slightly, cutting its distance each time, almost as if it were zeroing in on one particular spot. Left, right, then suddenly it moved in a perpendicular direction for a short distance, as if it were dropping to the ground, and was gone. It disappeared. Completely. We stood there, staring tensely into the darkness, waiting for the light to reappear, but it didn't. Finally, Pete spoke. "That's spooky. What do you think it was, Scott?" "I don't know," I said. "But one thing's for sure, there's something else on the island. Or there's someone else on the island. Or something else." "Yeah," I said. I tried to think of a logical explanation, but couldn't come up with one. "I say we hike over there first thing in the morning and find out what's going on." We started climbing down the boulders, heading for home. "Huh. It's probably more girls," said Pete gloomily. "They're probably flying them in by helicopter now. Pretty soon the island will be full of them." By the time we arrived back at Hidden Valley, we were pretty worn out. It had been a long day. A long, hard day. We canoed across a lot of water. We'd fallen in a lot of water. We'd hiked across a lot of land. We'd fallen in a lot of mud. We needed sleep, and lots of it. Right away, Pete tripped over one of the tulips along the plastic sidewalk in front of our gingerbread tent. "Ugh, rotten tulips," he grumped. "Wish I had a lawnmower. I'd mow those tulips." We would have slept out under the stars, but we thought there was a good chance it would rain again before morning. So we got out of our muddy clothes, took a quick dip in the lake to clean off, spread out our sleeping bags inside the tent and climbed into them. I took a few minutes to wipe the mud off my camera and see if it still worked. I looked through the viewfinder, took a flash picture of the witch on the wall, and advanced the film. Everything seemed okay. We'll get the girls tomorrow, I told Pete. We'll work out a plan. Something good. Well, it better be better than our last plan, said Pete. You could grind up our last plan and use it as chicken feed. Don't worry. They're smarter than we thought, but they can be beaten. This time, we'll use our wits. We'll outthink them. Just as long as we cream them, said Pete. Trust me, I said. I put my camera aside and turned off my flashlight. As I lay there, I found myself thinking about Jill. I was sure she was the one who had seen through us. I remember the way she looked at me, with those probing blue eyes of hers, when I told about how Pete had been attacked by the wolverine. Yeah, it was her all right. It had to be. I was just drifting off to sleep when I felt Pete jabbing me. What's that? He said. What's what? Up there, on the ceiling. I looked up. Glowing dimly on the ceiling of the tent were some tiny, tiny letters. They must have been painted with the phosphorescent paint. I couldn't quite make them out, so I sat up and squinted at them. Slowly I read them out loud. Upsy-daisy in the morning, downsy-snoozy in the night. Ugh, that's really sickening, said Pete with disgust. I think I'm going to upsy-daisy my dinner. I fluffed up the jacket I was using as a pillow and flopped back down on it. Take it easy, Pete, I said soothingly. Downsy-snoozy, downsy-snoozy.